Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Transformational Tuesday with Tasha. I am Tasha once again to be with you as we deep dive into this book, Atomic Habits. But I don't know about y'all. This has been more than just reading a good book for me. This has been life changing. As I wait for a few people to come in, I want to introduce myself to those who have never met me before, and this is your first time engaging with me. I'm located in Montgomery, Alabama, and I'm the owner of a company called Maximized Growth LLC, which what we do with Maximized Growth is a lot of training and development around leadership, communication, as well as team unity. And I love working with people on personal growth and becoming more self-aware. So I've been on this journey now for 15 weeks for Transformational Tuesday. And every week we come on. I love meeting new people. I love seeing the returning people engaging with me on here. And again, if you're just joining me, one of the things I would have to tell you, I love your engagement in the comments. So feel free to interact with me for sure. So on this journey, we've been talking about laws of behavior change. And in our previous Transformational Tuesdays, let me take a pause right there and say if you've missed any of them, you can find this on YouTube at Maximized Now, or you can go to my website in the video blog section. So we've been talking about 4 laws of behavior change. And tonight we're going to introduce the 4th one. But let me do a recap for the first 3. The first law of behavior change James Clear talks about in this book is make it obvious. He says if you want to have good habits, you got to make it obvious. The inverse of that is if you want to let go of your bad habits, you got to make them invisible. Then he talks about making it attractive. You know, we all gravitate towards things that look good, you know, and the inverse of that is if you want to let go of your bad habits, make it dissatisfying, make it unattractive. The third law of behavior change is make it easy, you know, and we talked about in this how sometimes we make the wrong things easy and the right things hard. But again, if we're going to have healthy habits, we need to make those habits easy to attain. And we need to let go of the bad habits by making them extremely difficult to go back to, right? So tonight we're talking about the 4th law. This one is all about making it satisfying. And I want to kind of share for me being on this journey, my productivity has skyrocketed. Today, I mentioned to someone, I said, I feel like the Energizer Bunny because I've been practicing these principles. And let me tell y'all, they work. They really do work. But prior to me doing this, I will be honest, I did struggle with procrastination. I did have days where I was like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? Or my commitments weren't as strong. But going through this, reading it and applying it has really helped me to hone in on better productivity. I will tell you also that it's teaching me. This is one of the tools that's teaching me how to be more grateful for where I'm at right now, how to let go of shame from the past, and how not to be so overly anxious about tomorrow or about what's happening next, but to just be grateful in the moment, to be present. That's the power of Atomic Habits, y'all. And it's teaching me, you know, how to be, you know. And before I dive in, I want to ask you all, and if you're watching the replay, I definitely want your feedback as well. So we're winding down on this last law of behavior change. So I would love to know, is there a book that you recommend for the next time when we get together? I have tons of books, but I want to hear from you. Do you have a recommendation of something that you'd love to see show up here on Transformational Tuesday with Tasha? If you do, put it in the comments section or inbox me or send me an email, Tasha at maximizedgrowthllc.com. But here's the other thing. If you have a story of progress, if you have something great to report as a result of you watching this series, I want to know that too. So same thing, inbox me, message me, or email me because I want to hear your story of progress, your story of how you have been adopting or implementing atomic habits for yourself. So let me do a review from last week. Last week we wrapped up that third law of behavior change, and remember it was make it easy. And what we talked about there is when there's friction to do an action, when there's friction to do an action, and that's more present, then that action actually becomes less desirable. But he talked about, one of the things we have to do is we have to create a commitment device in order to make the bad habit harder, but actually make that good habit easier. And we want to make sure that we're re-examining our choices, because that's what we talked about last week, was that all of this boils down to what choices are we making. And in previous chapters, the choices really lead to who are we becoming in the process? What is the identity that you want to gain from this? Because identity is what's going to fuel those habits for sure. And the goals that we committed to last week were making it difficult to slip back into bad habits, and really committing to stick to our good habits. So would love to know how things are going for you. Tonight's focus, we're talking about the basic rule of behavior change. And again, I talked about this is the beginning of the fourth law, and that is make it satisfying. I love how in this book, Mr. Clear always begins with a story. And this story was really powerful. I wanted to share this. So he talked about how in the late 1990s, there was a gentleman named Stephen Lubby. And Mr. Lubby actually went to Pakistan. And back then, Pakistan was a city that there was a city named Karachi that had over 9 million people in this city. And it was named the economic center for Pakistan back then. And it was a transportation hub, and actually had the most active airports and seaports in that region. But on the contrary, it was the least livable city in the world, not just in Pakistan, in the world. And he mentioned that 60% of the residents actually lived in, they called them squatter settlements or slums. We would probably say the projects. He said when the city was dry, the streets were a combination of dust and trash. And then if it rained, it was nothing but mud and sewage. And you had children playing in pretty much garbage. And he said it was infested with mosquitoes. Of course, what comes after that. You've got sickness that spreads, disease that spread. So you're starting to get a picture of this, right? And then to top it all off, they had contaminated water. So that resulted in basically epidemics of diarrhea, vomiting. People were having abdominal pain. 1/3 of the children were malnourished. And Mr. Lubby, who went over there to really help with this crisis, really observed that there's several things that can be done, but he mentioned that the simple habit of just washing their hands would make a real difference in the health of the residents. And the reality is, the residents knew this. They knew what to do, but how many of y'all know we can know what to do and not do it? Right? They hadn't developed the habit of the cleanliness. So the problem wasn't the knowledge of it. The problem was their consistency in the habits. So Mr. Stevens said, I see the goal of hand washing promotion not really as a behavior change, but really as a habit adoption. So what they did was him and his team, they partnered with Procter and Gamble. And that's a household name for us, right? Procter and Gamble supplied them with Safeguard soap. And this is what happened. The participants started washing their hands because they started loving the smell of the soap. They loved the foam that, when you wash your hands, the foam and the lather. And that feeling and that smell became pleasurable to them. So because of that, within months, the habits of hand washing increased because it became pleasurable to them. And this is what happened. Within months, the researchers saw a rapid shift in the health of the children in the neighborhood. This is crazy, but true. The rate of diarrhea fell by 52%, pneumonia by 48%. They had this bacterial skin infection that dropped by 35%. And here's the thing, this wasn't just a temporary fix. The long-term effects were even better because 6 years later, they went back and they started doing more research on this. And this is what they found 6 years later. They found that 95% of the households who had been given this soap for free and encouraged to wash their hands, all of a sudden they started noticing that hand washing was a thing. And here's the thing, y'all, all of this was transformed. It wasn't because back then, they all of a sudden they got this knowledge and they started doing it. They did it because it was personal to them. It became more pleasurable to them. Their senses were heightened, the smells, the feel, all of that stuff. Because it became personal, it was satisfying to them. So therefore, more and more people started adopting this. And this is a perfect example of what this chapter or this fourth law is talking about. The fourth law of behavior change is make it satisfying. There's a lot that we can unpackage in that, y'all, that we can make relative for ourselves. James Clear says we are more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience is satisfying. The good feeling prompts your brain to remember the action that brought about that feeling and to repeat it. So we're wired as human beings. We're wired for good feelings. We're wired for pleasure. We're wired for those things, right? And we repeat what we like to do. We repeat those things that are pleasurable subconsciously, and we don't repeat the things that we don't like. Now, here's the thing, that could work for us or against us, because how many of y'all have heard of instant gratification, right? In our society, everything is microwave. We want it now. We're not willing as a society, we're not willing to wait on the long-term positive effects. We want it right now. And so in a way, what'll happen is we'll want the instant gratification. And think about what he's saying here. We're wired to want things that are pleasurable. We're wired to want things that are satisfying, right? But if we're not careful, we could be wanting the wrong things. And I love how he's saying here in this chapter, he's saying we can flip this thing and make it work for us, not against us. Okay. And I could probably go down a list and think about all the things that we like, our flesh likes, we just like, foods, experiences, whatever. But what he's saying is we might want to learn from this and not go against the grain, but actually use it to our advantage. Use instant gratification to our advantage. I want to make sure you understand what I'm talking about, because sometimes this is what happens. We're good at setting goals that are long term. I want to get fit. So what do? I go work out. And the reality is we commit to something day one. We're not going to see the results on day one. We have to commit to it in the long term in order to see results. But because it's so far away or feels so far away, we don't commit long term. So what he's saying, to use instant gratification to our advantage, the thing that we want, we need to set the goals for. We do. We need to, like, day one, say, I want to get fit. So I have to show up at the gym. I have to put in the work. I have to eat right. We need to do those things. But what happens is we stop because we don't see the results fast enough. So what Mr. Clear is saying, why don't we take some notes from instant gratification, and why don't we do something to reward ourselves now while we're on the journey of that goal? Are y'all following me? So what is something that we could do now? You tell me what would, I'm using the example of exercise, and I'll go down that vein. So one thing he said, an instant gratification could be, I'm going to reward myself with a massage. For me, I love going into the sauna when I go to the gym now, after every workout, I go into the sauna, and that brings me relief. That is therapeutic for me. So that's my reward for working out, for showing up. That's the first thing that comes to my mind right now, but you can substitute that for anything. And what he's saying is, it is better for us to give ourselves those little rewards now versus having this long term goal that we might give up on because we feel like it's too far away. Right. And that's how Mr. Clear is saying we can actually make this instant gratification, we can flip it and make it work for us versus having instant gratification for temporary things that in the long term will work against us. He says we live in a delayed return environment. That means that we don't necessarily see the immediate outcomes of our actions performed in the present. So, what are some things, if you think about it? I use exercise as an example. You could substitute money. In fact, in the book, he talks about a couple that they decided, you know what, we want to do better. We want to be better stewards of saving money. So what they did was the immediate or instant gratification for them. They said, let's do this. They said every time we desire to go out to eat, we're going to not go out to eat. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that money and we're going to send $50 to our savings account. And the savings account is going to be labeled trip to Europe. So what they did was they didn't go out to eat, but they still used the money. They put it in their savings account, labeled trip for Europe. They did this for a whole year. But here's some things that they got out of this. One, they were able to eat at home. They were able to cook together. They were able to spend quality time together. It actually worked to their advantage because at the end of those 12 months, this is what happened. They had enough money in their account to where they could pay towards their vacation to Europe. And guess what? They ended up going on an amazing trip to Europe. So that's another example of how you can make instant gratification work for you. They probably would have spent $50 or more in the restaurant, right? But what they did is they actually got more out of this because their relationship probably got better, probably ate healthier. Hello, saved money and gas and just had quality time, but then, had an amazing trip to Europe. If they would have said, we want to go to Europe, made that long term goal, chances are they probably wouldn't have experienced all the things, the good things that they were able to experience along the way. So I thought that was a great example. And when he talks about flipping this, we have to make sure again that when it comes to instant gratification, we have to also starve the bad habits because a lot of times when we hear instant gratification in our society, immediately we go to those things that are quick, that are temporary, but they're not lasting. And sometimes the long term may have damaging effects. So he said, true enough, bad habits bring instant gratification. And he said the rewards may be immediate, but the consequences are often delayed. So we're not talking about this using this in a bad way. We're talking about using this to your advantage so that you can have, here's what I think, better moods, more energy, reduce stress, better relationships, all of those benefits. The example of a bad habit that the award is immediate, but the consequences are delayed could be something like overeating. You know, that could be something that you indulge in the food right now. It may be satisfying right now, but if you think about it over the long term, you might have negative consequences from these habits. That's what he means when he says the consequences are delayed. All of a sudden, like I'm just going to throw one out there. You're no longer able to fit into your clothes anymore. And then there's the side of the health. So we have to make sure that, again, our focus is on the good habits. And good habits usually work in the opposite manner. Good habits paired with instant gratification can have some amazing results. It really can. And it may not feel like the immediate outcome is rewarding right now, but the ultimate outcome is always going to be working towards your good. Always. Our brain prioritizes the present moment. So, this is what we have to understand: instant gratification can be good or it can be bad, but we have a choice. We have more control and we have more power than we realize in how this plays out, for sure. The title of this live stream tonight is "What is rewarded is repeated, and what is punished is avoided." I thought that was really powerful because, again, one of the things that I've talked about that was shared in an earlier chapter, and I said earlier today, is about identity. And when it comes to our choices, when it comes to who we want to be, when it comes to the outcomes that we truly desire, we have to make sure we're asking ourselves, this thing that I'm doing right now, whatever that is, we have to classify it, is it good or is it bad? And what is the outcome this is going to produce for me? And is this outcome going to help my identity in the person that I want to become, or is it going to hurt my identity and cause a consequence that might be delayed, but ultimately have a long-term bad effect? Who do you want to become in the process? That's the question. You get to decide. I get to decide. We all have a choice in the matter. Who do we want to become in the process? So you literally get to choose your instant gratification. Do you want it to be the temporary fix, the the thing that brings you the immediate pleasure with no thought for the consequence? Or do you want to have something that supports the good habits that you've chosen while you're on the journey to the results? And my friends, it is all about the journey. It's not even about the destination. It's not even about the result itself. It's about the journey. It's about that thing that I just asked you. Who do you want to become in the process? That's what matters most. Identity sustains a habit, and the identity is the reinforcer of the habit. So when I mentioned earlier, for me, that like today was a great example. I felt like the Energizer Bunny. I feel like that the decisions that I'm making now, the choices that I'm making now, they're energizing me. I feel good. They're energizing me and they're making me want to show up and be my best and do my best, because the identity, I'm going to read this again. The identity that I desire sustains a habit for productivity. Did y'all hear that? The identity that I desire sustains the habits for productivity, which helps me with increased energy, enhanced moods, less stress, all of the things that we all desire, right? The identity is the reinforcer. He says here, again, we have to be careful that we're making the right choices, because if your reward, going back to the exercise example, if you're using the wrong things as a reward, it won't work. It'll backfire. And that's what we call self-sabotage. If your reward for exercising is eating a bowl of ice cream when you're trying to eat healthy, then you're basically casting votes for the conflicting identity. The point in all of this, the fourth law of behavior change, is make it satisfying. Think about the other ones. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. And the recommendation is, why don't we go ahead and make it satisfying from the beginning? Especially when we are setting goals. We have desires, we have things that we want to be, things that we want to do. Why don't we from the very beginning go ahead and establish what will be the instant gratification things that I will allow myself that will help me to get to that goal. And here's the thing, y'all, sometimes, maybe all the times, when we're making the goals, we may need to go ahead and establish our list of instant gratification things from the beginning so that we're setting ourselves up for success. That might be the thing we need to do. Instead of being in reaction mode, what if we became more proactive? And here's this something just came to me. The message that I heard on Sunday from my pastor was participate in your miracle. That literally just came to me. And I was thinking in my head, that's one way that we can participate right there in our progress is from the very beginning. Go ahead and set up the things, set up the list, like on purpose, be proactive and challenge ourselves to say, you know what? This is what I'm going to allow myself to do, to have on the journey for achieving that goal. So that way, I'm making it more appealing and more satisfying for me to accomplish that thing instead of making it look like I have to resist temptation, I have to resist this. Why don't I just go ahead and set myself up for success now? Why don't you go ahead and just set yourself up for success now at the very beginning? You know, and he said, make that new habit enjoyable by giving yourself little rewards. Maybe it's the massage, maybe it's like me in the sauna, you know, maybe it's, you know, I need to be productive so that I can enjoy my vacation, you know, or whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's peace. Maybe that's the thing that is your reward is you're just after peace or you're after joy or you're after happiness. Sometimes it may not be a tangible reward. So if my goal is to be peaceful, my goal is to be happy, there's some things that I need to do now and reward myself with now because my long-term goal may be peace. I hope this is helping you. So here's some other key insights. Bad habits offer us immediate gratifications and we will see results immediately. That's the fact. But the outcome of, and here, the reality is the outcome of good habits can only be seen later on. But adding a little bit of immediate pleasure to a good habit can pay off in the long run. It can certainly pay off. Using reinforcements like small rewards can help us stay on track. How many times do we beat ourselves up when we feel like we're off track? I've got both hands raised. And we allow shame to come in, we allow guilt to come in. And did you know shame is two things, shame and guilt? One is I'm ashamed of who I am, but guilt is I'm ashamed because what I've done. Repeat that. Shame says I'm ashamed of who I am, and guilt says I am guilty for what I've done. And all of that does is chip away at our identity. And what if we were able to just free ourselves from all of that by being proactive and setting ourselves up so that we don't have to walk in that or wallow in that for sure. And one of the things that I always love to do when I'm coaching, when I'm training people, is to help people have a plan of action. Because as good as this information is, and it's some good information, y'all, it is absolutely nothing if we don't apply it. So as you're thinking through this tonight, as you're watching me tonight, is there something, and it's the most obvious step in front of you that you can do right now to implement instant gratification in your life for your goals? Find ways to make it enjoyable, y'all. Find ways to not, this is what it is. How you can get away from, oh, I have to do this, to I get to do this. I get to show up and work out at the gym because when I get done, I get to sit in the sauna and that's therapy. That's relaxing for me. You know, I get to look good in my clothes, right? That's joy. Right? So what are the things that it's going to take for you to make your habits enjoyable? And all of this starts right here in your own mindset, and it starts right here in your own heart. And it starts with you answering the question, who do I want to become anyway? Who do I want to become anyway? And is this thing that I'm instant gratification? Is this helping me to become more of that person or less of that person? Changing the way that you look at the same actions may be able to create more satisfaction for you. When we can shift our mindset, when we can settle in our heart who we are, when we can do those things, y'all, guess what? That's half the battle right there. I want to thank y'all so much again for being on this journey with me. We're going to continue this conversation next month in talking about Make It Satisfying. And we're going to dig into chapter 16. And that's all about how to stick with your good habits every day. And then let me go ahead and just give you a preview for chapter 17. Chapter 17 is talking about accountability and the power of accountability in all of this. Because I hope y'all don't think that you have to be out here doing this by yourself. It takes a village. We use that phrase all the time when it comes to kids, but how many of y'all know we need people? We don't need everybody and we don't need a whole lot of people, but we need accountability partners, right? So that's where we're going with this. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. Again, if you're watching the replay, do me a favor, put hashtag replay just so I can acknowledge you and see that you're on this journey with me. And one of the things that I always ask is please, whatever channel you're watching me on, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, be sure to subscribe so that you won't miss the notifications when I go live. I would really love if you went to YouTube and subscribe to the channel because you, again, when you subscribe and you click on that bell, you won't miss any notifications when I go live. And we're doing Transformational Tuesday every Tuesday at this time, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And again, I'm super excited for my growth, but I'm excited for your growth as well. So thank you so much for being on the journey with me. Y'all have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next week right here on Transformational Tuesday with Tasha. Take care. Bye.